And one plan to try to tackle the climate crisis is the ban on sales of new petrol and diesel cars. That's the plan here in the UK from 2030. But are we ready? Is the UK prepared for this electric car revolution? Our climate editor, Justin Rowler, reports.
I've been told that here in the Welsh countryside could lie the future of the car. So this is not what I was expecting. It's a VW Beetle.
Ah, you must be Justin.
I am. Former petrolhead Moggy is running a business turning classic cars into modern electric vehicles.
This is more like Back to the Future here. You can see the history and the future of transportation.
He is no environmental campaigner. He just thinks electric cars are better.
When you feel like you can floor it. Way! It's good, isn't it?
Though many more people than Moggy need to be won over, because in 2030 the UK government will ban the sale of new petrol and diesel cars. And there are some real blocks in the road to the UK's electric future.
There's basically only a few places you can actually get charging, and then half the time they're full up.
I should be able to take this car across the country without worry, but I can't.
A lack of public chargers is a stumbling block, especially for the 35% of us who don't have off-street parking. So what is holding it up? Mark Constable works for one of the few dozen private companies who are trying to install more public chargers on our roads.
In the next 10 years, we've got to deliver 10 times the amount of infrastructure that's been delivered in the last 10 years. All of the councils in the UK are kind of having to work through a set of rules and regulations that weren't designed for this type of works in mind. This is a brand new challenge for the council.
With long planning delays, over 200 local authorities and little coordination from the centre, at the current rate, the UK will be 100,000 chargers short of its 2030 net zero target. I spoke to Chris Stark, the CEO of the Climate Change Committee, the government's independent watchdog on climate change.
The government has set these targets for the introduction of EVs, and then there's cliff edge, where the sale of non-electric vehicles is going to be banned. And then it appears to just leave it to private companies to kind of make the arrangements. Is that sufficient?
No, it's not sufficient. And to give the government some credit, they do have a plan to increase the number of public chargers that we have in this country quite significantly. But it's quite difficult to know how that plan will be delivered. And we don't have a planning system that's set up for net zero in the round. So the targets are there, but what we don't have is a government that's put its shoulder to the wheel on it.
The government says it has told local authorities they need to develop their own plans for installing chargers, but says the rate of installation is going up.
And the government's net zero plans have huge implications even beyond the way we all get around. This is the Ford plant in London. The traditional car industry is worth £14 billion a year to the British economy.
This huge plant is an important employer. About 2,000 people work here. Crucial jobs in quite a deprived part of the country.
But if it doesn't adapt to the EV revolution, it could face a death sentence in years to come. Electric vehicles represent the biggest change in the car industry since the Model T replaced the horse and cart. Except, of course, this time round, we've got a decade to do it. It represents a huge opportunity. But here in the UK, we've got a hell of a lot of work to do.
Justin is here with us now. Morning, Justin. There is an awful lot of work to do. Is it achievable in that time frame?
Well, it's quite interesting. I sort of was talking to people about this, you know, are we ready? And somebody said, look, it's 2023. You've got 6.5 years to do it. We're building out the infrastructure for charging, which is so important if we're going to make these electric cars usable for people. And, you know, it is getting better. I actually did a big electric car journey on the weekend. I went from London up to North Yorkshire. We stopped once, parked up, you know, had a coffee, came back, and we've got kind of 80% of the charge in the car. So, you know, you can make it work. And the more kind of charging points there are, the easier it is. And, you know, sometimes you just need to top up. You need 50, 100 miles, you know, in the tank, and it doesn't take that long. And actually, it's not that difficult.
Unless you're in a hurry.
Unless you're in a hurry, yeah.
Unless they're not working.
Unless they're in a hurry, they're not working, or or there's a queue of people waiting for them. It does become very frustrating. But the apps that you can use tell you, whether chargers are available, that kind of stuff. So it is getting better. Look, it's not there. Nobody would say it's there. It can be difficult. People get in trouble, but it's definitely getting better. And the government, has a big pot of cash to help these things roll out. I mean, it's complicated, and as we explained in the programme, local authorities are responsible for it. So you've got 200 local authorities. There's planning issues about, digging up the road to put public chargers on the street and that kind of stuff. But, they're ramping it up, and hopefully, we'll get there. We're behind schedule at the moment, it should be said. But hopefully we will get there, and it will begin to be, to be workable. And
do you think the argument about the environment is persuading enough people? Because I know one of the people that you speak to in the film says that they just simply think that electric cars are better. Is that also quite a powerful, persuasive argument?
I think people, most car companies that have electric cars will let you do a test drive. And I would suggest, if you're thinking about it, go and try one, because they are really good vehicles. And they drive really well, and they're fun. They've got a lot of acceleration. They're good vehicles. So, I think they're persuasive now with the kind of range we're getting. But look, let's be clear, they're expensive at the moment. They're basically premium vehicles. There is a second-hand market. They're getting cheaper on the second-hand market. But the world is gearing up for this huge switchover, and it really is a massive kind of change in the industry. And in China, for example, they've got a new electric car made by a Chinese company that's £8,000 with a 200-mile range. And when you're in that kind of territory, it does become potentially a mass-market vehicle. And we're not there yet. But but this is a kind of, I don't want to overstate it. There's a kind of industrial revolution happening. We're switching away from fossil fuels to these new technologies. They are new, but they're being manufactured on a huge scale now. This is happening globally. Things will get cheaper, and they will get better.
We spoke to Michael Gove, Government Minister, 45 minutes ago on the programme, and we put it to him that it was the government going a bit soft on its net zero targets, because the language from government seems to have changed even in the last few days, that maybe they're talking about, making changes, adjustments, maybe not quite so ambitious as in the past. Well, what do you detect? Well,
they're in the run-up to an election, and they don't want anything that's going to threaten their, their chances at the ballot box. One thing that both parties have been clear about is that the overall net zero ambition, the idea that we'll go to kind of net zero by 2050, is not going to change, and they've also sticking to this target to kind of stop sales of new petrol and diesel cars by 2030. So I think they are holding firm to the kind of main agenda, and let's hope they do, because we've seen the influence of climate change today. The heat waves in southern Europe would have been virtually impossible without climate change. The temperatures and intensity of those heat waves, and we've seen the consequences in terms of what's happening in roads. So hopefully people will realise how important this is, and we'll support those efforts.
You talk about the wildfires and climate change. You yourself went to cover. Did you go to Rhodes?
No, I went to Spain.
You went to Spain,
yeah.
To cover the very, very high temperatures, and it was picked up, I think, by one of the national newspapers that you flew there.
Yeah. Yeah, and there were claims of hypocrisy that we flew there. Look, I'm a reporter. It's my job to go and cover the big stories. I'm the climate editor of the BBC. Climate change is a hugely important story, not just for Britain, but for the world, not just for people, but for all of life on Earth. It's changing, the environment in which we live in a really profound way. As a journalist, my job is to kind of bring home, tell the stories in vivid ways that connect with people and make people understand, the issues under discussion. I think that by being there and going out with, for example, with social services in a city in Spain that was experiencing heat of 43 degrees, out with social services, seeing homeless people to make sure they're OK, I think that vividly brings home the challenges that climate presents. And, these are difficult decisions. We do take into account, carbon emissions when we make these choices. But, look, the viewers will judge for themselves whether they think it's important. But, we like with any deployment, sending a foreign correspondent to cover a war, a royal correspondent to cover a royal tour, you decide whether there's going to be kind of value added, if you like. And we, the BBC, and I certainly felt there was value added for me being there. So
And I wonder how many million people went on to see that report.
Yeah, exactly.
Several.
That was broadcast not just here, but on all our international channels, radio, TV, online. So hopefully, reached a lot of people.
Justin, thank you very much indeed for coming in and joining us on the sofa. And the programme about electric cars that Justin has made, it's called Electric Cars, What They Really Mean for You, will be on BBC One at 8 o'clock tonight. Or you can watch, if you can't wait till 8 o'clock, you can watch it right now on iPlayer, or at least at 9:15 when we've finished.
Oh, not at 9:15.
Oh, no.
Definitely not at 9:15, because at 9:15, Morning Live.